I never believed in ghosts, not really. Sure, I liked to tell scary stories with my friends when the power went out, and I pretended to be afraid of the old cemetery down the road whenever adults brought it up. But it was just that. Pretend. At least that's what I told myself back then. The cemetery sat on the edge of town, tucked behind a thicket of crooked trees and half-collapsed stone walls. It wasn't the kind of place that had tourists or even mourners anymore. The last burial had been decades ago. The weeds had taken over, and the cracked headstones leaned as if they were exhausted, desperate to lie down for good. People whispered about strange lights there at night, or the sound of children crying. I didn't buy it. My name doesn't really matter. If you're reading this, you'll understand soon enough that names are temporary things. But I was 15 when everything started. Just another bored teenager in a town that didn't offer much except rusted swing sets, corner stores, and long stretches of empty roads. That August afternoon had been hot and thick with humidity. My shirt clung to my back as I cut across the woods with my two friends, Marcus and Emma. We weren't supposed to go near the cemetery. It was dangerous according to every adult we knew. But rules like that exist to be broken when you're a kid. Bet you won't go inside, Marcus teased, pushing a branch out of his way. He was taller than both Emma and me, cocky in the way boys get when they've just discovered they can make their voices crack on purpose. Emma rolled her eyes but smiled nervously. It's just stones. Dead people don't care if we step on their grass. We reached the low stone wall, vines draped over it, and a hole in the corner was just big enough for us to squeeze through. The smell hit me first, damp earth mixed with something faintly metallic, not rotten exactly but sharp, like old pennies rubbed between fingers. Inside, the air felt cooler, shadows pooled under the trees, and insects buzzed lazily over patches of wildflowers that had forced their way between graves. Some headstones were so eroded their names were illegible. We wandered, laughing too loudly, trying to cover up our unease. Marcus dared Emma to read one of the epitaphs out loud, and she pretended to summon a ghost in a wobbly voice. I was about to tease her back when I noticed something odd near the far corner. A mound of earth, collapsed slightly, had exposed something pale against the soil. At first I thought it was a skull. My heart lurched, but then I saw the fabric. A small dress, faded pink with lace trim, clung to a figure half buried in dirt. It was a doll, not the kind you'd find in a modern toy aisle. This one looked handmade, maybe a century old. Porcelain face, one glass eye still intact, the other cracked into a spiderweb of lines. Its hair was the color of ash, matted and tangled with leaves. I crouched and brushed away the dirt, my fingers trembling, though I didn't understand why. The doll was heavier than I expected when I lifted it, its dress stiff with grime. A faint smell rose from it, musty, but underneath was something sharper. Iron, blood. No, that had to be my imagination. Marcus wrinkled his nose. That thing's gross. Put it back. Emma leaned closer. It's kind of pretty, though. In a creepy way, I couldn't stop staring at it. The cracked eye seemed to follow me, though the head never moved. For reasons I can't explain, I felt a pull, like it wanted me to take it. I'm keeping it, I said before I even thought the words through. Marcus groaned. You're gonna get tetanus or some curse or something. Don't blame me when you start coughing up worms. Emma gave a weak laugh, but I saw the unease flicker across her face. Still, neither of them tried to take it from me. We left soon after, squeezing back through the gap in the wall. I cradled the doll under my arm like it was mine already. That night, I cleaned it as best I could in the bathroom sink. The porcelain face came out pale, almost luminous in the dim light, though the crack across its left eye seemed even deeper once the dirt was gone. The dress remained stained no matter how much soap I used. Its tiny shoes were missing, feet chipped at the toes. I set it on my desk facing the bed. Something about it being there made the room feel full, like I wasn't alone. When I turned out the light, I lay awake longer than usual, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan. My eyes kept darting to the silhouette at the desk. I told myself it was just a toy, just glass and cloth. Eventually, I drifted off, and then I woke up. The room was silent except for the faint rasp of my breath. The fan had stopped spinning, though I hadn't touched the switch. I sat up, confused. Moonlight spilled across the carpet. The doll was no longer on the desk. It was sitting on the dresser, closer to the bed. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought it might break them. I froze, staring at the small figure. It hadn't just toppled over. It was upright, hands folded neatly in its lap, head tilted slightly as if listening. I must have fallen asleep at my desk and moved it without remembering. That was the only explanation, right? I whispered this to myself again and again, until exhaustion finally pulled me under. The next morning, I found the doll back on the desk. Where I'd first placed it, I tried to laugh it off. A dream, that's all. Just a dream, but a part of me knew better. I told myself I wouldn't let the doll bother me. It was just an object, after all. Porcelain and fabric, nothing more. But the unease stayed with me like a film over my skin, impossible to wash away. For the next few days, I tried to live normally. School, chores, hanging out with Marcus and Emma when I could. Yet every time I came home, my eyes went to the desk before anything else. The doll always sat there waiting. Sometimes its head seemed tilted a little differently, or its hands rested at a new angle. I told myself that was just my imagination. On the third night, though, I stopped pretending. It was around 2 a.m. when I jolted awake, throat dry. I reached for the water glass on my nightstand and froze. The glass was gone. Instead, the doll sat there in its place, porcelain face gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Its cracked eye caught the light in such a way that it looked wet, as though it were weeping. I couldn't move. My breath stuttered in my chest, loud in the silence. Finally, I forced myself to sit up, heart hammering. I reached out with a shaking hand, grabbed the doll by its stiff little torso and shoved it back onto the desk. That's when I saw the smear on the wall. At first I thought it was dirt, but when I leaned closer, I realized it was darker, tackier, red. The word was jagged, written in crude strokes like someone had dragged a wet finger across the paint. Play. The letters dripped. Rivulets running down toward the baseboard. I stumbled back, knocking into the dresser. My stomach lurched. I grabbed a tissue and dabbed at the smear. The color came away sticky, metallic, blood. I scrubbed frantically until the word faded to a faint shadow, whispering to myself that it had to be some kind of prank. Maybe Marcus snuck in, but that was impossible. My window was locked. My parents slept down the hall. No one could have done it except me. That thought wriggled in like a worm. Had I written it in my sleep, some subconscious urge? But the strokes were too high on the wall, higher than I could reach without standing. The doll stared at me from the desk, silent and still. The next morning, I said nothing. I couldn't. What would I tell my parents? That a toy had written a word in blood? They'd send me to therapy or ground me for vandalizing my own room. I cleaned the wall thoroughly, rearranged the furniture to cover the faint stain, and tried to pretend it never happened. But the following night, it happened again. This time the word was longer. I woke to the sound of something scratching, a faint squeak like nails dragged across plaster. My eyes flew open. The doll was gone from the desk again. My gaze darted to the far corner, and there it was, standing upright on the floorboards beside it. On the wall, another message had appeared in thick, dripping lines. Stay, I clutched my blanket, knuckles white. Stop it, I whispered hoarsely, though my voice barely made a sound. The doll didn't move. But I swear its head shifted a fraction toward me, acknowledgement in that cracked stare. I couldn't take it. I bolted from the room, heart slamming against my ribs, and locked myself in the bathroom. I sat on the cold tile floor until dawn painted the window pale. When I crept back into my room, the word was still there. Only the doll had returned to its place on the desk, hands folded primly in its lap. Over the next week, the messages multiplied. Every night, without fail, new words appeared. Sometimes a single word, mine or come. Sometimes jagged shapes that looked like half-formed letters, always written in that same smeared red, dripping down the walls. I tried scrubbing them off, covering them with posters, even moving furniture in front of them. But the words always returned, spreading to new spots. The closet door, the ceiling above my bed, the floor beneath the rug. I stopped sleeping. My grades slipped. Emma noticed first. "You look like hell," she said one afternoon as we sat outside the convenience store sipping sodas. Her eyes narrowed. "What's going on with you?" I wanted to tell her, God, I wanted to spill everything, the doll, the blood, the sleepless nights. But the words jammed in my throat. If I admitted it out loud, it would make it real. Just, not sleeping, I muttered. Marcus smirked. Bet it's that creepy doll you took home. Told you it was cursed. I tried to laugh, but it came out thin and broken. That night, the writing changed. Instead of a word, a sentence sprawled across the wall above my desk. The letters were shaky but unmistakable, dripping down like open wounds. You belong to me. I stared at it until my vision blurred with tears. My chest felt like it was caving in. For the first time, I thought about throwing the doll away, burning it even. But the moment I picked it up, a wave of nausea crashed over me, so intense my knees buckled. I dropped it instantly, gasping for air, and when I looked again, its cracked eye seemed almost smiling. I stopped counting the nights. Sleep had become a stranger to me, something I only glimpsed in fragments before being torn awake by whispers, scratching, or the heavy weight of silence pressing on my chest. My room no longer felt like mine. The walls, the ceiling, the air itself, everything belonged to the doll. It wasn't just the words anymore. The first time I heard the voice, I thought it was my mother calling. It was a faint sing-song murmur, so soft I couldn't make out the words. I stumbled into the hallway, rubbing my eyes, but the house was dark and silent. My parents were asleep, doors closed. Only when I crept back into my room did I realize the sound hadn't stopped. It was coming from the doll. Its lips didn't move. But the voice seeped from somewhere deep inside the porcelain, low and childish at once, like a lullaby sung through broken teeth. I couldn't understand the words. They were muffled, thick, as if spoken underwater. But the tone, sweet, coaxing, wrapped around my skull and settled into my bones. I shoved the doll into the closet, slamming the door shut. I pressed my weight against it, heart hammering, but the whispering never stopped. It bled through the wood, curling into my ears until I thought I might scream. Stranger things followed. Books toppled from shelves when no one touched them. My bedroom door rattled violently in the middle of the night, though the knob never turned. Sometimes I woke up with dirt on my sheets, fine grains of soil scattered like I'd been lying in the ground. And then there were the shadows. At first, I thought they were tricks of the light, shapes flickering at the corners of my vision. But soon they grew bolder. I'd catch sight of small figures darting past my doorway, reflections in the mirror that didn't belong to me. Once, when I leaned down to splash water on my face, I glanced up and saw not my own reflection, but a pale little girl staring back, her eyes as cracked and glassy as the doll's. I stumbled back, gasping, and when I looked again, it was only me. Emma noticed my spiral. She pulled me aside after class, her brows knitting together. "You're not okay," she said bluntly. "What's going on?" I wanted to tell her. I really did. But how could I explain that I was being haunted by a doll I couldn't throw away without feeling like I'd collapse? Instead, I muttered, "Just stressed." She gave me a look that said she didn't buy it. "You can talk to me, you know." I nodded, but the words stayed locked in my throat. Marcus was less subtle. "Dude, you're freaking everybody out. You look like you haven't slept in a year. If this is about that doll, just ditch it already. Trash it, burn it, whatever. It's just a toy, I almost laughed. If only it were that simple. One night, the whispering grew louder. It wasn't just in my room anymore. It threaded through the whole house. I crept down the hallway, and the sound seemed to come from every direction at once. When I passed my parents' bedroom, I froze. Their door stood open. My mother lay sprawled across the bed, eyes closed, lips moving as if in prayer. My father sat upright, staring blankly at the ceiling, his face slack. The whispering spilled from their mouths. I backed away slowly, bile rising in my throat. Neither of them stirred. Back in my room, the doll sat neatly on my desk, hands folded as if nothing had happened. But written across the wall in fresh, dripping strokes were 3 words that made my blood run cold. "She is waiting." The dream started soon after. I dreamed of being buried alive, soil pressing down on my chest, filling my mouth and nose. No matter how I clawed upward, I sank deeper, the weight suffocating. Sometimes I dreamed of children's laughter echoing across the cemetery. High and sharp, but when I turned to look, the graves yawned open, empty. Dolls sat in their place, hundreds of them, all with cracked eyes. And sometimes I dreamed of a girl. She stood at the far end of the graveyard, pale dress fluttering, hair hanging in stringy clumps. She never moved, never spoke, but her eyes were glassy and fractured just like the doll's. When I woke, my nails were caked with dirt. My sheets were streaked with mud. Once I even coughed and spat a pebble onto the floor. That was when I knew this wasn't just a haunting. It was a warning. The doll wasn't content to sit quietly in my room anymore. It wanted me closer to where it came from, the cemetery, and deep down, though I tried to deny it, I felt the pull too. By the time autumn rolled in, I was no longer myself. My reflection in the mirror barely looked human. Sunken eyes ringed with bruised shadows, skin waxy pale, lips cracked from whispering to things no one else could hear. I didn't even fight it anymore. The doll had made sure of that. At first, I tried to resist, to keep some part of my life normal. I'd sit at the dinner table with my parents, forcing food past my dry throat, nodding at their questions, pretending to listen to their chatter about work. But underneath it all was a rhythm, a pulse I couldn't escape. The doll's voice was inside my skull now, not leaking from porcelain lips or the corners of my room. It spoke with the confidence of someone who owned me. Don't leave me. Stay close. You are mine. The words drummed through me like a second heartbeat. Started writing them down without realizing it on scraps of paper, the margins of my notebooks, even across my arms with ballpoint pens until the ink bled through my skin. My teachers noticed. Emma noticed. Everyone noticed. But no one understood. Marcus tried to confront me one day after class. He cornered me by the lockers, his face flushed with frustration. "You're scaring Emma," he snapped. "Hell, you're scaring me. Whatever's going on, you need to stop. Throw the thing away, burn it. Do something." I stared at him, unable to answer. My hand twitched at my side, and for one terrifying second, I imagined slamming his head into the locker door until his blood spelled new words. The thought didn't come from me. I knew that. It came from her. I walked away without a word. That night, the writing on my walls changed. It wasn't just commands anymore. It was a story. Scrawled across my ceiling in dripping strokes was a fragmented tale. She was alone. She was cold. They put her in the ground with nothing. No toys, no friends. No one to hear her cry. Only the dark, only the dirt. Only me. I lay in bed staring upward, lips trembling. The letters seemed alive, shifting when I blinked, as though the wall itself was bleeding her grief. The doll sat on my chest, small porcelain hands resting just below my collarbone. I hadn't placed it there. "You're heavy," I whispered, though it weighed almost nothing. My voice cracked. Its cracked eye caught the glow of the streetlight outside, and for a moment, I could swear it blinked. I tried once more to get rid of it. I stuffed the doll into a garbage bag, cinched it tight, and biked all the way to the edge of town where the creek ran fast with autumn rain. My hands shook as I hurled the bag into the rushing water. The splash echoed in the trees. I stood there panting, sweat chilling my back despite the cold night air. I didn't sleep at all when I got home, but for a brief moment, I felt lighter. Maybe it was over. Maybe. When I woke up the next morning, the doll sat on my pillow. Its dress was soaked through, damp and reeking of river water. Mud streaked its porcelain cheeks. Its small mouth curved, just slightly, into a smile that hadn't been there before, and written across the mirror in my own bedroom, in sprawling red letters that covered every inch of glass, were the words, "Did you think you could leave me?" That was when I realized the truth. I hadn't taken the doll from the graveyard. It had taken me. By winter, I no longer recognized the sound of my own thoughts. Her voice had replaced mine. It coiled in my head like smoke, thick and sweet, filling every corner of me until I couldn't tell where I ended and she began. The doll no longer waited on the desk or dresser. It followed me. I'd find it on the bathroom sink as I brushed my teeth, perched on the kitchen counter as I poured cereal, propped against my pillow when I stumbled home from school. Sometimes I swore I saw it move in the corner of my eye. Small porcelain feet shuffling, dress swaying, but I didn't scream anymore. I didn't fight because part of me wanted it. She told me stories at night, stories of a little girl buried in the cold earth, nails scratching at the coffin lid until they split and bled, lungs filling with dirt while no one came to help. I could feel her pain as if it were my own. My chest heaved, my throat burned. Sometimes I woke up gagging on soil, coughing black clumps onto my sheets. "You understand me," she whispered. "You'll never leave me like they did." I stopped going to school. My parents tried to intervene, but they'd changed too. Their faces looked hollow, skin gray, movement stiff. Sometimes I caught them standing at my doorway in the dark, their mouths moving soundlessly as if repeating her words. I don't think they were really my parents anymore. The house itself began to rot. Walls sweated with damp patches. Mold spread in strange circular patterns. The blood words grew more elaborate, spiraling across the ceilings like veins. One night, I woke to find a new sentence dripping above my bed. "Come home." The letters stretched long, curling like skeletal fingers toward me. That was when I understood. She didn't want my room. She didn't want the house. She wanted me back where I had found her, where she had been waiting all along. The graveyard. I don't remember deciding to go. It felt less like a choice and more like inevitability. The doll sat in my lap as I pulled on my coat and boots. Its porcelain was cold against my thighs, but I didn't mind. I carried it out into the night, the winter wind stinging my face, the moon hanging low and sickly above the rooftops. The streets were empty, silent. Even the dogs that usually barked behind fences were gone. The whole town felt abandoned, as if the world had already ended and I was the last one left. My bike carried me down the long road toward the cemetery. Tires crunched over frost. Breath fogged the air. The doll leaned against my chest heavier than ever, though it was still no larger than a child's toy. By the time I reached the crooked stone wall, the sky had paled with false dawn. The gap in the wall yawned like a mouth. I stepped through without hesitation. Inside, the cemetery was alive, not with people but with movement. Shadows rippled between graves, darting like fish beneath the surface of water. I heard the faint chime of laughter, children's voices high and brittle, echoing across the frost-bitten grass. The ground pulsed beneath my boots as if something vast and breathing lay just below. The doll stirred in my arms. For the first time, its porcelain hands twitched, fingers curling slightly against my sleeve. A voice filled my skull, clearer than ever. "Bring me to her place." I didn't need directions. My feet carried me straight to the far corner where I'd first found it months ago. The earth there was still disturbed. The mound collapsed inward like a wound that never healed. The soil shifted as I approached, crumbling into the shape of a small pit. And I saw them, dozens of dolls. They lined the grave in uneven rows, some half-buried, some sitting upright in the dirt. All cracked, all staring. Their glassy eyes glittered in the gray light like a field of insects. My stomach turned, but my arms moved on their own. I lowered the doll into the pit. Its body sank into the soil, dress darkening as the ground welcomed it back. For a moment, silence. Then the earth opened. The pit yawned wide, soil falling away to reveal a dark hollow beneath. From it rose the smell of rot and old blood, so thick I gagged. The dolls clattered against one another, shifting, almost crawling closer. And from the darkness below, a pale hand reached upward, small, childlike, fingernails cracked and bloody. It grasped the edge of the grave, pulling.